Welcome to the Funded Now What podcast with your host, Andrew Lee Miller. Brought to you by GrowthExpertz. You are in store for a chat about funding, marketing, startups, and all things growth.
Hello and welcome back to the Funded Now What podcast. My name is Andrew Startups, and this is the first episode of 2025. I'm super excited because I've got Marshall Darr from Stretchdollar, who just raised $6 million to revolutionize benefits and health insurance for small businesses and employees, which is very near and dear to my heart, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But even more, I'm really nervous because it's the first marketing guy ever on the podcast. So, most people come on with an engineering background, and I'm able to create a ton of value. So in this episode, we're going to actually see if Andrew knows his shit and can actually teach a marketing guy anything. Marshall, how you doing, man? Thanks for coming.
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. I was born and raised in San Jose, California. I'm in Pittsburgh now, and we got, I think, 18 inches of snow in the last 48 hours. So wow. This is a whole new world for me. It's winter to the max.
It is winter to the max. I have family in Pittsburgh. I was there the day before New Year's Eve, and it was 60 degrees. That's crazy.
It's chaotic.
What made you come to Pittsburgh? Let's start that. Is that for Stretchdollar that you moved out there?
No, it's for love. My wife's a doctor, and so we met the day before the COVID lockdown in San Francisco. She was a resident at UCSF. I followed her to Philly. We were there for 3 years while she did a fellowship program, and then now she's an attending at Pittsburgh. And so,
that's awesome. So you're basically taking a back seat. No matter how much success you have, you're still going to follow her around. I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I didn't even know I was talking to someone with Bay Area connection. All right. Shout out to San Francisco and to all the people that leave like you, but, and me. I'm in Mexico as I'm taking this call right now, but I'm there a lot. Okay. Well, that's cool and interesting, but let's talk about Stretchdollar. First, I wanted to say, when I saw the name, I often help startups name, and Stretchdollar sounds like a rapper from the 90s. Stretchdollar back on the mic, But it makes sense. I mean, you are helping small businesses with one of the most costly and not only difficult things, but something that I think they overlook and a value they're not even able to offer employees, which is why people often don't work for small businesses and have to go to a big company. So, tell us a little bit about Stretchdollar exactly. I didn't even give you a solid intro. I wanted to let you do it. Tell us about what it is and why you started it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Stretchdollar is a way to, in my opinion, increase access to health benefits for small businesses. If you have, fewer than 20 employees, this is probably something you've bumped your head into repeatedly year over year, trying to figure out the best way to take care of your people, because it's hard. Typically the health plans available to you are something called fully insured small group plans. They require you to pick what hospitals people can go to, what pharmaceuticals are covered. They typically take over 100 hours to set up. And there's some of the worst policies out there. It's really too bad, the lack of options in the very small business space when it comes to health benefits. So we flipped it a little bit where we're using some new IRS legislation to effectively create a funding platform that operates as an alternative to a traditional small group plan, where instead of being hey, everybody has to get onto this one Blue Cross Blue Shield policy, it's more hey, everybody gets a couple $100 a month if you sign up through Stretchdollar, and then we match the employees to policies on the individual market that fit their needs. Wow. So you are just a funding source. You're helping your people get covered. We're matching them to the best possible policies. Oftentimes they have dozens to hundreds of plans to pick between, which can be intimidating, but we're there to help. And the hope is we can get people to policies that best match their personal needs.
Without the CEO taking hundreds of hours too.
Yeah.
Awesome. That sounds like it took years to build for you. It's essentially like a two-sided marketplace. First, you get the supply of all the healthcare providers. I mean, how long have you been working on this?
Well, like a year and a half. So we're still like relative babies. But the good news is the individual market's been pretty well curated. The ACA over the last like 10 years or so has turned into one of the best risk groups in the country, meaning that they provide very cost effective care. It's just historically employers haven't been able to access that. That changed in 2020 with some new legislation. If you've been chasing healthcare buzzwords, I'm not sure why you would be. You might have heard of something called an ICRA, and that's what we're using to effectively create this funding channel that didn't exist before. And so I've been in healthcare for very small businesses for about 10 years now. Initially at a company called Gusto, where I worked on the team that rolled out their health benefits. And then I actually spent about 5 years at a startup trying to be a health insurance company. So we were trying to, build the network, price the plans, hold the risk. And that was all really hard. I was running sales and marketing, and I kept getting on with these small business owners. And at a certain point in time, they'd get overwhelmed if they weren't from the very beginning, and be like, I just wish there was a way to give people cash and let them decide for themselves.
Wow.
And so that's what we're building at Stretchdollar.
That's amazing. Really cool. And, I think because it's so hard, like I said, a lot of people just don't do it. My father's a small business owner, and I know his employees don't have health insurance because it's like, I just pay them well and they go sort it out on their own. And you're kind of just making that even easier.
Yeah. Well, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But,
it's your show. I'm just on it, just hosting the look. So, sorry, you were going to say.
No, but we have a ton of people like your father who are actively signing up because they realize that, like, if I were to just give these people $300 extra per month on their paycheck, 15% of that goes to payroll tax, 30% they're paying on income tax. And, they're only actually realizing, maybe 60% of the money you're trying to give them. That move through Stretchdollar, $1 leaves your bank account, $1 goes into theirs.
Wow.
And
also,
we're free.
Without it being through Stretchdollar, it's unlikely they're going to really see the need to do the health insurance. They're like, I got $300 more this month. And they're going to go use it on something else. And so you're actually ensuring that you're taking care of your employees, which makes a lot of sense. So a year and a half working on building out that supplier database, which I can imagine was really difficult. I scaled during the pandemic a benefits company with my wife that was no code, no tech, and we ended up working with some really big companies. But we tried working with the healthcare providers as well. We did some Blue Cross Blue Shield Anthem stuff, but they're very bureaucratic and hard to work with. How did you even get them to care about you as a startup? Because I think any founder listening runs into those issues. Like, how do you get big enterprise companies to care about you before you're even live?
Oh, you beg, like sometimes there's not a shortcut. You just gotta kiss a lot of rings. But it's an astronomical amount of paperwork that we're doing behind the scenes. And, there's a lot of carrier appointments, state-based filings, licensing. This whole, it can be complicated for us, but it just shouldn't be complicated for our customers. And that's sort of like the ethos. We're just trying to create the simplest, easiest way for small businesses to get started offering health benefits. And luckily, that's been exciting to some of the health insurance companies as well.
Yeah. There's not that much innovation in that space. And so somebody coming along with a great brand and a really good focus. I mean, we know majority of businesses are small businesses. There's like 90 million small businesses in America. I mean, it's a huge target market. My next question is more around your monetization. It's not clear, but I mean, are you charging the employer, both sides? Or are you just making like a little cut or what, if you don't mind talking about that?
Yeah. So it's nice and clean. Basically, our platform creates a way for employers to provide funding to employees for their health insurance policies. We also help employees find their health insurance policy. And when we do that, we get commission from the health insurance carriers on the policy selected. The nice piece about this is it's actually illegal for the carriers to charge differently, whether or not a broker's involved. And these rates are set geographically. So there's no net impact to the employee or the employer if they use Stretchdollar services. And we wind up making around 5% of the health insurance premiums collected.
Got it. Do you think there's a room probably to make like a monthly a SaaS model on top of that for like the companies that have a certain number of seats or employees, like over 20?
There probably is, and most other people in the space providing the service charge a PEPM fee of like around $30 per employee per month. We've thought about, does it make sense to have some tiering where we provide extra features and let people buy up into it? But I think it's really important to us to maintain that free tier indefinitely. Like ultimately, like I think the mission behind Stretchdollar is how can we like provide better access to health benefits and better access to small businesses in general. Because like I think there's a lot of reasons why people love working for small businesses. Like typically you're closer with your coworkers, your work feels more impactful, you learn, you're like actually engaged, but you have to give up so much to come from a corporate job. There's like less structure, the benefits might not exist. And like we're sort of starting with health benefits because that's a gating factor for a lot of people as to whether or not they can even consider a role at a small business. We just helped someone with MS who had been at their job for about 9 years. They hated it. And one of our clients was trying to recruit them, but they felt like they didn't have an option to like leave that position because they thought their healthcare would stop. They wouldn't be able to get their medications. They wouldn't be able to see their doctors. And you have a lot of people in America who are sort of like stuck in employment situations due to health situations that like are out of their control, and it sucks.
Different kind of golden handcuffs I never heard of, but that does suck. And that's like an excellent piece of social media or advertising content as well if you're able to utilize that. That was a lot of questions about just what you do because it's so interesting. I want to dive into this funding round. You were able to raise $6 million from Pittsburgh, which is not easy in any climate, but 2024 was a cataclysmic year for raising money across the board. So it sounds like, this wasn't your first rodeo in the healthcare industry, but as a founder, it might've been your first job. Like, how did you raise that funding and, walk us through what that looked like?
Yeah, absolutely. So we did a 1.8 million pre-seed back in the summer of 2023, which was a tough time to do it. And then about a year later, raised a $6 million seed over sort of the summer of 2024. And to sugarcoat anything, it's tough to fundraise right now, especially if you're not like an AI first company. So like we got rejected a ton. I think I talked to probably like 90 firms and we wound up taking in money from like 6. Yeah. Wow. And so a lot of people passed and like they passed for good reasons. And like, I think like people get so self-conscious talking about like when people weren't interested in giving them money, but I think it helps with the selection process in terms of like, if they're not interested in your business, you shouldn't want the money from them.
Right.
And like, we wound up with an amazing like group of investors who are deeply interested in small businesses, which is not a given. Like we have people bring up like, why go after small companies if big companies exist? And like, if you take money from those people, that question will continue to come up more and more forcefully. And so like, it's important for like you to put everything on the table in order to get rejected, to make sure that you don't accidentally wind up with investors who don't really vibe with your vision, because that will distort what you can do. Like you're effectively taking money from people who are becoming your boss in some regard.
Yeah.
And it's like my wife's not the first girl I asked out, but
Yes, she is.
immensely,
Yes, she
I'm
is.
immensely happy with where we are. And so the selection process is important, and that can involve a lot of rejection. And it takes a while. It took us, I think we started really in April, and we wrapped up the round in like late July, sort of early August. And we wound up sort of making more space. We had a large strategic that came in as well, and really set the foundation for, I think, some interesting things we're about to do.
Amazing. And, how much was the learning curve of, I mean, a lot of founders don't even know about cap tables and, valuation and stuff like that. Did you have experience in that before? Or were you just like figuring it out as you went?
No, I did not. And so luckily I knew a few founders who like helped steer me. But I think there's some important things to do like early if you're thinking about doing a pre-seed. Like one, like incorporate as a C Corp, base it in Delaware. You want to be as vanilla as possible with like your early fundraising rounds. Like you can get smart about a lot of things in your business, but if you get smart about like the terms on your safe documents, like it's going to be a huge red flag for people down the line. And like you want to operate as industry standard as possible with like your fundraising rounds. So like C Corp from Delaware, use the YC safe. Don't innovate here.
Yeah. Keep it simple, stupid in the early days makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. That's awesome. And, you have a marketing background, which scares me for this call, but you mentioned before we started recording that, everything you've done up to this point has been like really B2B. And a lot of these clients, these small business owners that you're working with, operate in a more like B2C feeling because it's emotional, it's a small team, it's not a lot of bureaucratic levels you got to go through to close a deal. All of these are like wild positives, by the way, compared to B2B. Like the sales cycle is much shorter. But what do you need $6 million for? Like how much of that's going towards marketing? Where do you plan to inject that capital?
Yeah, it's a good call. We have quite a bit to build, and like we've been lucky to grow really quickly, but it's been more human capital than I think we feel comfortable with getting to sort of like our end state. Broadly, like small businesses are a super underserved market when it comes to health benefits, and there are some reasons behind that. Like people have struggled to serve them in a profitable way given the margins on the business. And so instead, they've focused on much larger clients. And then if they provide a product at all to small businesses, it tends to be like a watered down version of like a very like enterprise leaning product by nature that in my opinion just doesn't work for the small businesses. But one of the issues has always been like, oh, small businesses act like tiny enterprise businesses, which I don't really think is true. I think they more so interact like consumers. I mean, I know I do now as a small business owner myself. It's like I don't have time to get on like 4 sales calls about everything that I need to buy. Like I want to just be able to go to a website to learn what I need to learn, to see what I need to see, and be able to basically set myself up in a not super laborious way.
Makes tons of sense. No, I have never been a part of a large company myself. Never even really been a part of a company more than 10 employees, I don't think. And when they get acquired, I just get out of the way. But I have sold to them. And I think the big difference, like feeling wise, is a lot of people in large companies like to feel busy. And
Yeah.
a lot of people in small businesses don't want to feel busy. We want to get shit done.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, I think. But so walk me through, and this is, I think, my last question, and then I'm going to just start stream of consciousness growth
Yeah.
hacks for you. But walk me through what your marketing stack looks like right now, or what you're planning on executing, and like where gaps might be that I could give some insight in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of our tech stack, we have customer.io plugged into Salesforce. Our product feeds data directly into Salesforce, and that's kind of become like our hub that we work out of. We see broadly like our strongest channels are really like organic traffic. That's accounted for about like 75% of our signups, and partnerships, which have driven quite a bit of value. We're lucky enough to work with the team at Oscar Health, and they've been super helpful there. And so I think like moving forwards, like business development will likely have a place. Driving more and more organic traffic and volume, I think, is going to continue to have a place. We've dabbled in paid campaigns, and they work in some places, they don't in other. We found it to be like very regional specific, where we find kind of hot spots and limited like cost efficient volume. Like
Yeah.
you can spend $1 billion on paid and you might not get much more than if you spend 1 million.
Right. Diminishing returns. Well, it depends. You have a huge total addressable market.
Yeah.
With that organic traffic, can we dive in a little bit? Where is that organic traffic coming from? Is that PR stuff that's still a halo effect, or is that content, or where's that coming from?
Broadly content. We've seen really good engagement. We have a blog on our website where we go over, we have like geographic specific, like health plan recommendations all the way down to like city specific locations that drives a lot of traffic. And so we get pops we don't even like necessarily know are going to come. Like we recently got really hot in Dallas. I don't really know why, but like love Dallas. So yeah.
Shout out to Dallas. Thanks
Shout out Dallas.
That's awesome. Well, I think that's one first thing we can really start honing in on. If blogging is really starting to work, making an SEO cleanup on the site is really good. It's 90% on page. So making sure that the keyword strategy across the site, even off of the blog, is really focused on small business keywords is a 1 week initiative. The lowest junior marketing coordinator and ChatGPT can increase the keyword density 10x in a couple iterations. So that's something to really focus on. I mean, a couple free SEO audits, and you'll see any technical stuff that needs to be worked on. That's going to 10x that blog over the course of the year if you just get that stuff out of the way. And then with the blog content, that's genius. We call that like a directory listing strategy, where you're like, your category, subcategory, city page, sub-city, neighborhood. The more granular you go and just leave it out there, like using Yelp as the kingpin of directory listings, you see that. If you ever search for any kind of restaurant, Yelp dynamically populates a page really quick and is like, here it is. And Google massages the hell out of them for that. So you can do the same thing. But if you think outside of just those geo-specific terms, what are other, like the top 20 things that small business owners are going to be searching that are in the exact mind states, like how to save money as a small business in 2022. So top 20 ways to save money. Whereas number one is obviously using Stretchdollar to save money on your health insurance plan. But then number two is, paying 12 months in advance for your SaaS, stuff or whatever it is. It's pretty easy. So if you could think of 10 or 15 other blog titles like that, those end up also becoming very popular ads as well. So if any of that content works organically, obviously, even the Dallas one, if it's working organically, I would take that organic article and then run that into paid campaign out there and get like 50 times more impressions. Google's never going to admit this to me, but when I do that, I always see the organic increase as well. Like there's some traffic boost from the ads, whatever it is, some kind of part of the algorithm, especially if you're spending money on Google, they just like want their organic thing to raise up because it's the majority of the clicks. So I think that will add to that blogging strategy. I mean, one of the things I always say that gets like laughs from the crowd when I do public speaking is if it's working, expand on it. And people are like, that sounds so obvious, but it's not when you're a founder and you're doing like a little bit of everything. But if you in the beginning tell me blogging's working, I think those are solid things. Another thing with the blog would be getting guest bloggers to come on. So that sounds really easy too, but specific to getting small business influencers. So I can't think of the names. Barry Molds, I think, is one. I've done some small business focused stuff myself. And, you build a list of the top people on Twitter and LinkedIn that focus on small businesses, and you give them a little bit of spend to come and write an article for you, but that links back to them, and Google loves them for small business related stuff. And all of a sudden you start moving up pretty quickly in the small business community and awareness to those people. And I mean, you have a great brand. So those are like foundational marketing things I do before I start spending a lot of money. Like, let's really do this organic stuff, partner with these people, get some PR, get the name out there, because then you see not only does conversion rates really go up from the ads, but people just trust the brand, and so they follow, and everything just works so much more successfully, as opposed to just getting all this cash you just raised and going straight to paid acquisition. Like you said, you could throw $1 billion at it, but if you do the hard work beforehand, again, going back to Google ads, there's this thing called a quality score for anybody that doesn't know it. That's why Facebook is so popular, because you don't need to figure out any of this stuff to make it successful. You just throw money at it and it'll show it to a ton of people. But with Google, with a little bit more intelligence and optimizing your website organically for those small business keywords, the speed, your quality score goes up. And the higher the quality score, the lower the cost per click of paid user acquisition. So you can actually beat a $1 billion healthcare provider that's competing for the same keyword if you do that hard work on your website ahead of time. And it's one of the greatest feelings as a startup. I have a client in the telecom space that we did like maybe a 2-month SEO campaign on their website, and they're organically coming up right next to $1 billion company called Splunk. And, they're spending like in the low 6 figures annually on marketing as a whole company. So it's pretty fun to, and the exposure of just showing up next to them really makes you important. From the paid user acquisition side, so we talked about the influencer stuff. I mean, after that blogging campaign, like the ones that work closely with you or you like the most, I would continue to work with them for paid user acquisition and stuff. I mean, there are, you could go to Google the top 20 influencers in small business and you just want to work with all of them. So like, again, there's not a lot of people doing interesting things focused on small businesses. So you should be able to create a solid pitch for those people as well, that they should want to work with you. I mean, even for their own businesses, right? So what are you doing from a paid perspective?
From a paid perspective, we're doing some PPC, mainly on like AdWords, Bing, a little bit of Quora. We found that like it seems like the like shopping based platforms work better for us. We have yet to come up with the creative for an Instagram ad that has people running out and switching their company's health insurance. It seems like you kind of got to be in the mode a little bit.
The intent being higher is going to shorten that sales cycle so much. It's kind of a life cycle thing. Right now, where you're at, you want to get all the people that are in the time they're looking for it. And then once that's maxed out, then you start convincing people that aren't even looking for it yet. If you skip over that, you slam your head against the wall trying to convince people, where you're missing that like low hanging fruit. So I think that's absolutely genius. And like I said, focusing on increasing your quality score for those AdWords campaigns is going to make those campaigns so much more successful. And a lot of people don't do it. Are you outsourcing that, or is that internal?
So we're outsourcing the paid. We're running the content internal currently. And I think there's a lot of room with the content. We thought paid was going to be our like big driver this end of year. We didn't spend that much on it, but the conversion rates are just so much higher with our organic traffic than it is with our paid. I think too, there's we want to pop up for small business owners all of the time, but there are some times where it's even like more relevant than others. Like anyone who's like Googling, like, what do I do if I have a sick employee or something like that? There are certain trigger events that like lead people to consider putting out health benefits, that like really dialing into the life cycle of a small business, that like, what are the moments that lead them to be thinking about this, and figuring out how we can be very topical in those moments are going to help us with, broader. Yeah.
You have a lifestyle marketing background, I remember. And so that life cycle marketing background, those like solid key phrases, the solid Quora questions, those should end up being blog posts that you have an answer to. And then that should be the landing page for the AdWords ad, because the quality score is going to be so high that you're just going to beat anybody on that. And then eventually it's organically coming up. But I completely agree. And honestly, it's very hard for early stage businesses to figure out those triggers. So already knowing that is like half the marketing battle. But But yeah, I think that, let's talk a little bit about my suggestions around that display ad. Even if it's just like 5% of your spend, I think you should still be doing it from a branding perspective to just show business owners, because they're going to have that trigger happen eventually, and then it's going to be in the top of their mind. So, you know, there's some other left field marketing things you can be doing, like growing a newsletter of small business owners, like starting like a small business weekly newsletter. It doesn't take a lot of effort, you know, marketing person on the team, chat GPT, getting, you know, grabbing other small business news that's happening, and, you know, building a following of people, and then, you know, once a month shooting in a salesy email to that list about why they should move forwards, or a case study of the company with MS, and amazing, like heart tear jerking ways that you're helping people, like injecting that into a banner in each newsletter will probably also really convert some of those, I guess, untriggered people yet. But it's the same thing. Those ads can just land people on some of those blog posts that maybe aren't super aggressive, but then there's a pop-up to join the newsletter, and really building people in that newsletter list, and then communicating with them over time. The whole idea there is, like I said, just staying top of mind for when that trigger happens. Because a lot of businesses, you know, if they're like barely surviving, the last thing on their mind is giving more benefits to their employees. If things go well, then that's the first thing that, okay, now I want to really take good care of my employees. So you kind of just want to like be top of mind and be along for that ride until that trigger happens. So I think thinking about it like that, the creative doesn't necessarily have to be that difficult to think of. Like, you're not trying to convince someone that isn't already convinced anymore with that paid user acquisition. You're just showing a piece of content about small business owners. So, you know, top 25 ways to save money in 2025 for small businesses could be an ad. And it's like, maybe either you're working with an influencer to do a video kind of thing, or if you know Outbrain or Taboola, like they're, you know, because you have a marketing background, but that can go out on websites that business people look at, like CNN, BBC. It's at the bottom, top 25 ways to save money. By clicking that, you know, it's a business owner, that's a small business owner that wants to save money. That alone qualifies them enough to sign up to your email or to be retargeted with more aggressive ads later on. So I think approaching it like that might make it a little less, not risky, but nerve-wracking for you, because trying to figure out the holy grail creative that takes someone from, I was looking at cats on Facebook to now I know what I need to do for my employees. That's pretty tough. And it's, like you said, it's going to take a lot of money and testing and losing money in paid ads to really find that secret amazing creative, which I believe is probably partnering with one of the biggest like small business influencers, and like it's them talking about it. Like, you know, hey, I'm Andrew, and you might know me from blah, blah, blah. And I got to tell you, one of the best ways that my company is able to save money right now is working with Stretchdollar. If you haven't heard of Stretchdollar, they're this, that, and this. Like, that's going to make someone go, I didn't know about it, but I trust that guy, and let me click on that. So that's worth testing too, probably.
I'd love to just get you going on like the concept of like brand building from kind of like a cold start. I think like we have an obligation of a certain like threshold of brand to be able to be trusted with something this personal and this intense. And it's kind of hard to get there, you know, there's 3 people and a laptop, you know, like, so, I mean, just getting you going on like how to like establish and build brand credibility on, you know.
I love it. So it's not just 3 people and a laptop. It's 3 people, a laptop, and $6 million. A little different than 3 people and a laptop, but you don't waste money either. It's not 20 million. And I think, you know, just off the top of my head, your name is Stretchdollar. I would wrap the brand around just saving money and being like the source for all the ways small business owners can save money. And that's your brand, and that's your educational content. That's the stuff that isn't super salesy. So if you go into Chat GPT or even do it by hand, you can extrapolate from that like 20 different content ideas. Another exciting idea to save money. I mean, I love, I don't really do social media myself anymore, but I used to love looking at this guy called Creative Explained. And his whole thing is ways to not necessarily save money, but like decrease your waste by like recycling things. Like, next time you get a lemon, squeeze the lemon over your cutting board, and it'll disinfect it or whatever. And it's just like a trusted source for like decreasing your waste. And so you want to kind of be like that for small business owners, like anything related to saving money as a small business owner, or taking better care of your employees. So like this might, the company I started with my wife over the pandemic was a way for companies to take better care of their employees. It's still around. It's very small, but we worked with Netflix, Meta, Microsoft, Netflix, huge companies. We basically brought in world-leading wellness experts to speak to the employees about stress management, burnout prevention, nutritional wellness, sleep optimization. And then obviously the company gets the ROI if the employees are sleeping better. But what they really want is to show their employees that they care about them. And so I think those are the two arcs of your content and your brand, is like how to better take care of your employees as a small business and how to save as much money as possible as a small business. So if you build a brand from that, it can demystify like a month-long content calendar from there. And content can be starting a podcast like this, obviously, like the Small Business Savings Podcast. It doesn't have, or honestly, the Stretchdollar podcast sounds cool too, because then anyone's going to listen about saving money. But the Small Business Savings Podcast, sponsored by Stretchdollar, makes a lot of sense to me. So that's a piece of content. You've got this savings blog, all the ways that companies can save money in the blog, your social media posts, it all plays in together. I mean, how does that sound so far?
It sounds great. And like, one of the nice like side effects, I just love that like SEO has gotten so smart at this point that if you produce genuinely useful content, you get rewarded with traffic. Right. And like, it's nice that, we're further along. I remember growing up, it was just keyword stuffing, as many keywords as possible.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I shouldn't say that on recording, but I mean, no, like people are like, Andrew, how can we get to the first page in like 30 days? I'm like, you can't. Like, it's not hackable as much anymore, and it shouldn't be. Instead of trying to gamify stuff, create as much value as you possibly can for your target, and Google will notice. I mean, there's still some workarounds. There's, do as much as possible with Google, get as many links as possible, even though they become less and less important every day. Little things like posting your job, your student internships on .org career boards and stuff. Maybe for, here's a little hack. This could be fun for you. Not that many really, Pittsburgh, for people that don't know, does have an incredible tech scene, like because of the universities and stuff. I mean, that's what got you guys out there, but it's nowhere near like, obviously San Francisco or LA or New York. And so on the Wikipedia page for Pittsburgh, there's probably a section for like interesting companies or media, or you could, if you had a legitimized Wikipedia editor profile, which only take 60 to 90 days to set up. I have done this in the past, by the way. I ethically added the startup I was working at to the Dubai page under media, and that link really gave us some solid juice, and that wasn't the thing, but we ended up having a 9-figure exit for that company. But so I think there is ROI from like spending an hour once a month on like, doing those kind of things. But the overall mindset of trying to hack and fake it, Google's always going to beat you. You're just a regular guy and they're $100 trillion behemoth. And so, just create as much value as possible. And that's what I honed in on with the branding thing. Just like a couple, I'll always, when people are like stagnating on social media, I'm like, just think of 5 tracks that create a lot of value, and then create as much content in a burst of energy once a month in those lines. Like, so for you, I came up with 2 right off the bat, but it could also be like, a little bit of fear makes sense also, as when there's a trigger that we're looking for. So talking about those scary scenarios when other employers did not do it, or that unfortunate situation that person was locked in, scaring the employee will also be a trigger probably, because the employee can go, hey boss, I found this thing, you should look into this, and so that could even be worth incentivizing as well. Like if you bring this to your employer and they move forward, we give you a $250 Amazon gift card or something. And so I think, I just talked about a lot, but did any of that resonate?
No, it did. It did. This is awesome. Yeah, I think 2025 is going to be a very content-y year. I got one more question for you. So we've started seeing leads come through from ChatGPT. I don't know anything about how it's happening or what's going on.
Yes, absolutely. I have also started getting that. That is a reflection of that organic traffic and organic content. Probably you have built some links and are coming up at the top for those kind of searches. And so ChatGPT is just ripping from Google and from the content that you created. And that is a function of SEO. And so it's going in the right direction for you already. There's really, that's the only thing that I tell people to do is recognize the searches that people will be searching for that might lead to your business, and then optimize your website and your content around that, and ChatGPT will fall in suit. And I've had that for a client of mine as well. They're like, holy shit, we just closed this company. I asked them how they heard about us, and they sent me the screenshot from ChatGPT. How do we double down on that? We've been doubling down on that for the last 2 years. That's the result. And so that's really awesome. You can't fake that either. It's the benefit that comes after doing that SEO stuff so much. But even you mentioned you're doing stuff on Quora. It's probably looking at Quora too. It's the same question. So the more, and it's funny, you're the first person ever, not just on this podcast, to mention, we're doing stuff on Quora. Like I'm always telling people in my presentations that social media is a lot more than LinkedIn groups, Facebook groups. There are subreddits, there's Quora, there's commenting on YouTube videos. If you you guys are only 3 people, 1 hour per week, we're going to go and we're going to join all these groups. We're going to comment on this stuff. And it's not like, hey, everyone should sign up for Stretchdollar. It's, hey, I just thought I'd share this amazing blog post about how this company was able to help this employee with MS, get their next job or something like that. Like the valuable content that you can share, so for this podcast, Hisham, who runs my podcast, every week he has a couple hours where I ask him to go and share the best clips from the last episode into the LinkedIn, Facebook, subreddit, and anywhere it's really relevant. And then he'll also go and search on YouTube, startup marketing podcasts or startup podcasts, and then the top ones that come up, they'll comment, love this clip. You should also check out this podcast. It sounds spammy, but it's really valuable because that person that's listening to that podcast is interested in other cool podcasts. So you want to make sure that you're really targeted with that stuff, but putting a little bit of effort on that is just going to 10x that ChatGPT result.
Yeah. Interesting.
That's awesome. At the end of the day, that means you're doing the right stuff. Like you're much further along, but it sounds like you've got an organic, ethical focus and it's starting to already pay dividends. I think it's just time to expand on the relationships with influencers, the paid user acquisition, and really honing in on the content for that brand. So you got a busy year ahead of you, man. How can people find you?
Stretchdollar.com. You can pop right into the website. You can look at local plans, see what people in your area are making available for their employees. You can go into and get yourself set up in about 10 minutes if you've been putting off thinking about benefits. I know we all have. We were actually the first client on Stretchdollar ourselves, and so everyone's happy, so that's an important part too.
That's really good, really, really great. And if you don't want to do that, you can just DM me at Andrew Startups, and then I'll connect you to Marshall, and I'll ask him to give me a commission, so you can do that as well.
There you go.
Marshall, dude, it's been a pleasure. Super excited to watch you from the sidelines, and if there's anything we can ever do at GrowthExpertz, hit me up. Thank you so much for being here, man. I really appreciate you.
Absolutely, so fun. Thank you.
That has been another episode of the Funded Now What podcast with your host, Andrew Lee Miller, brought to you by GrowthExpertz. If you liked the episode, please subscribe. And if you really liked it, please share with other founders and entrepreneurs. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next episode.